Hi everyone. I wanted to give you feedback on this last set of papers. I'm a little bit late, I know, partly because my house is all torn up. I'm having the whole interior painted and new carpets put in, so it's really kind of turned my life topsy-turvy. So I'm a little bit late, and I'm sorry about that. Wanted to let you know I got everything scored for you except the reflections. And I want to take a little bit of time on the reflections so that each of you gets a real response from me on those. But just to give you some feedback on the different elements that you worked on, first of all, let's talk about the tech component. That was long, I know, but I think important for you to see various components of the way technology has really had an impact on schools and at varying levels. So, for example, at the beginning, we talked about broadband and about E-rates and about planning and having a vision for how to use the computers. So often computers are bought, no teacher training is given, teachers are just expected to start using them. Frankly, that's not always very effective. Another problem, of course, is taking out huge loans and spending a lot of money for technology that then is obsolete in 3 or 4 years. Or there hasn't been a provision made in the vision for maintaining the computers. Having one tech for a whole school sometimes just doesn't keep those computers up and running. So those kinds of issues, we used to just have textbooks that we bought and stored and then checked out. Well, now we not only have textbooks, but we also have computers, pretty expensive technology. And so that has rearranged budget allocations and priorities in schools in quite a huge way. Another area where technology has been tremendous has been in assessment. It's because of technology, because of adaptive technology, we can do much more complex assessments, and we can demand so much more of kids in terms of critical thinking, way beyond multiple choice tests, that we really can get much better data on how students are performing and what they're learning. So it's had a really positive impact in that way. The whole new SBAC or tests that are now used by the state of California in their system are really much better tests than anything that we've had before. And they've shown the inadequacy of what we had before also, and also shown they've had a huge impact on how we're teaching kids because everything's online. Now there's a huge push to be using the computer to practice using those skills much more frequently. Another huge area has been social media, because you realize that social media has really upped the ante on discipline and on helping students to become compassionate with each other and understanding and work better together and understand each other better. The social media component of technology has in many ways had a really negative effect on students. And that's something that we're still grappling with. It's also had a negative effect on teachers because many times teachers interact inappropriately, which you studied a little bit of. Finally, the whole idea of personalizing education, that is great. We have all kinds of programs that we can personalize to meet individual needs for many, many kids. What's the danger of that? The danger of that is that we put everybody on a computerized program and we just let them fly, and they don't get much personal interaction with a human being, with a teacher who really knows and understands them. And furthermore, because we can personalize this way, all of a sudden we're expected to personalize everything for everybody. It's very time consuming. It's very teacher intensive. And as always, the public expects us to do all of these things without considering what the constraints are on our actual time and what our actual priorities are. So those are all issues around technology and bringing technology into the classroom and making it such an important part of our lives. That kind of leads into one of the problems that many of you had was the question about the OECD, the Organization of Economic Consortium. These are all the highly skilled countries in the world, and many of them use computer testing. The whole point of that question was that many of these highly skilled, highly developed countries like ours and even more developed than ours, in fact, are using computerized teaching and training, and they're not finding that they have given students much benefit in terms of learning. So that brings up the question, then why are we pushing so hard to use technology so much of the time? Is the goal of what we do in our schools to teach kids how to use technology? Or is it to teach them those really fundamental skills of being able to read widely, understand, think, and express themselves or ourselves really clearly and in creative and innovative ways, not just in terms of narrative, I'm an English teacher, but also creatively in solving problems and expressing those. So those are all areas where we need to think carefully about how the social contexts really push our schools. You can see that the unions have been a huge concept that pushes and transforms our schools as well. And you saw that through the reading. Let's talk just briefly about that whole sequence of reading. I think you can see really clearly how teaching and education has really evolved. You know, it was very basic and fundamental in the colonial period when religion really was the fundamental curriculum. And but as the pressures of new immigrants and a much broader scope of people started to have an impact on growing towns, education became much more standardized. We ended up with common schools. We started training teachers. It became much more secularized than when the Catholics started putting pressure on the schools and on the public funding and saying, we want the funding too. But the Protestants said, oh no, we can't do that. We're going to have a completely secular school. It became more secular. So you can see too how there have been tensions between the basic, just reading, writing, arithmetic versus a classical education. Or should there be a classical education for the very wealthy and the rich, and a much more vocational education for people who don't want that? We're coming back right now, by the way, into looking at more vocationally oriented education again, in STEM education, as well as in some of the trades and trade schools. There's a charter school opening here in our county that's going to be a high school where kids go for the vocational arts. So you can see those things developing along with the whole issue of teachers and the development of teachers, teacher training. The whole idea, remember, of getting women into teaching was because they were so nurturing, but also fundamentally because you could pay them less than men. But they began this whole idea of a union because of this inequity of pay. And you can see that battle still going on. Actually, in the 1970s, which is when I started teaching, one of the main reasons I went into teaching was because it was one of the only occupations where as a woman I could be assured of getting an equal pay with men. That's not that long ago, you guys. So anyway, it's still an issue, of course. Right now there's a huge teacher strike in West Virginia. It's all over pay and benefits. So, so partly, you know, I wanted you to go in and take a look at the different unions' websites to see that there are lots of resources there for you to access, even if you're not a member of those particular unions. But also I want you to realize just how much the unions have benefited teachers. I'm not always in agreement with everything the union wants or the way it works, but it has benefited teachers tremendously. And think of all the things that it negotiates for you. It negotiates your pay, your rate of pay. Women, the fact that you're of equal pay with men is part of that. It establishes your benefits, your health benefits, your retirement benefits, what kind of vacation you get, what your daily hours should be, how much should be expected of you to put in a day in terms of time. Other things would be your sick leave, your insurance. All of those things are negotiated for you by a union. And when you have a collective voice, you have more power to get what you need than you do if you were negotiating individually. So that's why I asked also the question about closed shop. Now, really only one person looked up closed shop to find out that there really is no such thing as a closed shop. That was outlawed in 1947. A closed shop means that you have to be in a union before a company can hire you. And that's not true now among teachers. They can hire you as a non-union person. Nobody coming out of college is a union person yet. But you're expected to pay the dues whether you join the union or not. And the reason you're expected to pay those dues is because that union, that collective voice, bargains for you. Now, where the real problem, I think, comes in is that unions have become very politicized. They get political, and they use some of those union dues to lobby politically. So some of that has come up, but there are also big corporations, big businesses that would like to break the back of unions entirely so that workers don't have any way of negotiating other than individually. And that can be a problem. At any rate, that was the importance of taking a look at those union pages. And let's see, I think I've gone over just about everything for you. But, you know, I wanted to think again about all these different pressures that come to bear on teachers and on education and what the expectations of our communities are. So thinking in terms of technology, you know, in the last 15 years, that's added a whole new layer. And when you looked at that whole component in the technology about the tests that Stanford gave, asking kids to look at just at a web page, at a home page, try to differentiate an ad from an article on an informational site, or even to look at a picture and see if it was valid. Students don't know how to do these things. This adds a whole other layer of curriculum that we're expected to teach now, to teach kids how to evaluate what they find on the internet, to really differentiate what is verifiable, what is credible, and what is not, and what do we do with all this information that isn't very credible. So that's the way we want to think about all these different issues. And so right now you're looking at some very potent issues having to do with American Indian students, LGBT, transgender, the whole issue with the brain damage that's done in football, all of these kinds of things, not just football, by the way, other sports as well. And of course, you're all aware of the shootings and the idea that, well, now, yes, we should require teachers, or we should ask teachers to take training so that they can handle a gun and they can actually be defensive of their students and protective in that way. A whole other layer of responsibility and expectation. It's very interesting to look at what is expected of teachers. So as a result of having listened to me talk on this, I would like you to do one thing. I want you to take 5 minutes, and no more than 5 minutes, please. And I would like you to go to create a document in response. And I want you to send me, not in the little comment box below this, but actually create a document of your own. I'd like you to send me what you think about being asked to learn to handle a gun in order to protect your students. How would you feel about that? What are your thoughts about it? What do you think? Would you be willing? Would you not? Do you think it's a viable way of protecting students? What are your thoughts? So just give that to me. It's just a paragraph, not a huge essay, and no more than 5 minutes. So thanks, you guys. I'll be talking to you next week. Contact me if you're having any difficulties. Let me know what's going on with you. Okay? Thanks very much.